Welcome back, everyone. This is our second segment with Mr. Patrick Macqueen at the Legalist. Sorry, uh, medalistlegal.com and in Chandler, Arizona. And we were just talking about some of the strategies and the differences, of course, between a will and a trust, and and some probate items. And I guess one of the next follow-up questions that I had for you, Patrick, is do all homes, since I'm in the mortgage space, do all homes have to go through a probate?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, if you have properly titled your home in the name of a trust, or you have some other vehicle to automatically transfer that home to somebody else upon your passing, the answer is no. Unfortunately, too many times homes and other items of personal property do need to go through probate, but if you've properly titled your documents, or probably put your home in the name of those in which you'd like to have your property when you pass away, the answer is no. You won't have to probate them in all circumstances. And I do want to make one point about probate. There's kind of various levels of probate here in Arizona and in most other states.
Okay.
So we have quicker versions of probate based on the amount of assets that we're talking about. So in some instances, yes, these probating an estate can take years because you have a contest. There's a creditor out there that wants, to go after equity in the house or whatever it may be. But we also have quicker mechanisms, so a little bit more informal of a process. They still take time, though. I mean, you can't get a lot of these probate processes done in a quick order. But there are different. I want to make the point that there are different levels of probate, all of which probably should be avoided.
Okay. And if we go kind of down that road where, it sounds like, the state of Arizona in this case has an estate plan, boiler template for you. If you didn't have things titled properly as far as your house, and I use the house because it's probably people's, greatest asset. Um, are there any workarounds between sort of, I have nothing and a full-blown trust where there's a mechanism to help people get that probate avoidance for their home?
Oh, sure, certainly. So Arizona law provides, we call it a poor man's trust, and I think it is a great idea. And to me, it gets you to where a trust would otherwise get you with respect to your property. For those who do not want to set up a trust, for those who don't want to manage a trust, for those who don't like the formalities of trust, perhaps, but it's called a beneficiary deed. And let's say, for instance, I don't want to spend the money on a trust, and I don't want to go through this whole estate planning process. Or maybe I just have one asset, and it's just my house. What I can do is I can execute a beneficiary deed, naming my kids, naming somebody else, naming the interest I want them to have in the property. I can go and record that document. And upon my passing, the beneficiary deed automatically transfers immediate rights in the property to whoever you have named in the deed, the grantees in that deed. And so effectively what we've done is now created the sort of atmosphere or the no need to probate like we have with the trust. That's why we call it the poor man's trust, because you
Yep.
do not need to spend that much money to get this done, and it gets you to the exact same place. Now, again, a trust is needed in certain circumstances because you have a lot of other assets, etc. But if your main asset is your house, great, use a beneficiary deed. And the cool thing about a beneficiary deed is, let's say I convey one, or I record one and give the property to some grantees, but a couple years down the road I change my mind. That thing is not permanent, right? Until I pass away.
Right.
So up until I pass away, I can re-record a new one that becomes effective, and I can name somebody else to get my property. So it is very much like a trust, but it is just dealing with real estate.
I love it. And I'm so happy to hear you say that. I've advocated for beneficiary deeds for, a lot of my first time home buyers that have no real assets. The house is their only asset. Maybe they're single and have a couple of kids, and this is all they have. This is their nest egg, right? This is all they've got in the world. And, and I've advocated, so it's great to hear from your perspective. And for those of you that don't know, beneficiary deeds, there's only a few states of the 50 that even have these. And in Arizona, we're lucky enough to be one of those states that allows this. And I've always found this, personally, as like you say, the poor man's trust, right? This is a step on the ladder, but at least it gets you off the ground, right? And so I love that that's your advice too for, again, not for everyone, right? I'm sure there are cases where a beneficiary deed is maybe not the most appropriate tool. But you know, if you're not going to do a will and not going to do a trust, it's probably a great first step.
Absolutely. And ultimately, if you want to do a trust at a later date, you can still do a trust. It's not going to hurt the trust. You can change things around. But I think it is a sort of minimum type of thing that people should be doing, because otherwise you may perhaps be costing those grantees that would otherwise get the property a lot of money to prove that they are your heirs, to go through this
Mhm.
process and spend money hiring an attorney, etc. So for usually less than $500, this is a great tool. Usually it's $300 or less, and you can find. I don't always recommend people doing these sort of self-help things, particularly with something this important, but you can find samples online. I'm not advocating for the use of samples because some of them are inappropriate. At the very least, if you don't want to hire an attorney to help you with your beneficiary deed and to help draft it anyways, prepare one yourself and have an attorney then review it, if you really want to save some money there. But usually you can get these done for less than $500, and way more people than should really be doing these. I think a lot of people would benefit from these.
Yeah, I agree. Are there other are there professionals that you would recommend to prepare those, or does your office do things like that? Or
Yeah, we probably do 8 to 10 a month, something
okay,
like that.
so they
So
could reach out and have you help them, get that thing executed and then recorded at the county.
yeah, so we have an electronic recording, so we can actually record it from our office, which is
Perfect.
nice. We also have notaries, etc. And so that's where the fees and stuff come in. There's a recording fee that Maricopa County or whatever county you're in is going to charge, and then a little bit of time on our end to just to make sure that all of the named beneficiaries and the interest, that the way in which you want it titled. Do you want your grantees to get this property as joint tenants with right of survivorship, or do you want them to get it as tenants in common, or is there another designation? And so that's really where the time and the preparation comes in, is making sure that your grantees, the people who are going to get that piece of property, take title in the manner you want them to take title.
Yep.
And so that's why it's about $300 to $500 in most circumstances.
Well, and like you said, right, probably a lot lower price point from an initial step than, than a trust, I'm guessing.
Certainly, I mean, I've drafted trusts that, by the end of the time it was done, or I've been a part of drafting trusts, because sometimes you have to work with other professionals to get certain aspects of a trust done. I mean, I've seen those go into the $50 to $100,000 range because of the amount of assets, because of what we were doing, because of the specialization, that sort of stuff. So I've seen them very expensive, but in most circumstances, most people are going to spend $5,000 or less for a complete estate plan, and that's kind of where I tell people to have in mind $5,000 for something fairly basic, which includes not just a trust, but a pour over will, powers of attorney, certain disclosures, certain authorizations, those types of things. So I would budget $500 or $5,000 for that for the average sort of middle of the road trust package, and then 10% of that is the cost of the beneficiary deed. So usually
Right.
that's and it gets a lot of people to the very same place that that trust would. So you may not need that, $5,000 plan.
Right. Yeah. If that has a lot of bells and whistles, and and that's the other part, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit in the future, which is they may not have that necessity for a trust, let's say today. But if they're a younger person and on a trajectory, that doesn't mean that they don't really need that 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. But again, so okay, so if we're just generically budgeting and saying, okay, starting point for a trust might, budget, start with a 5,000, a beneficiary deed might be at the 500. Where does the will does it somewhere in the middle?
Again, it really depends on how complicated or complex you are trying to make it. Most wills by themselves, I don't recommend people just do a will. I think you
Okay.
should do a will plus powers of attorney plus the beneficiary deed, those types of things, because they all work together in some fashion. And so I think, I usually tell people, okay, I will prepare this will for you, and it's probably going to be 500 to 700 bucks. But I really strongly urge you to consider having all of these sort of accessory, supplemental,
Mhm.
complementary, whatever the right word is, documents that are going to go in and help make this a stronger will to help create a stronger estate plan. So if you want a will-based estate plan, and you may want a will-based estate plan because you have kids, and the will address, guardianship provision, who you want to take care of your kids
Right.
if you pass away and your spouse passes away, or if you're not married, there's a guardianship provision. So parents with kids absolutely need, at the bare minimum, a will, because a will, as long as the kids are under 18, a will spells out your goal for the kids. Who's going to take care of them?
Right.
And so it's an important document. So I usually don't recommend just a will, but if you're going to have a will, probably $500 to $700 for something just like that.
And so like if we talked about the will in sort of this conceptual like package, right? That had the bells and whistles of, these, whatever the powers of attorney, the beneficiary deed along with the will, would that put it somewhere, sub $2,000 for that kind of package of bells and whistles that go with the will, but not a trust? Do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a fair sort of estimate. And
Okay.
again, each situation's
Yeah, yeah,
unique.
yeah. Everybody's unique. I get it. I was just kind of
But
thinking in my head, it's kind of like, what is it that, good, better, best, right? So
yes, I think
good
that's
might
the
be the beneficiary deed, better
yep.
might be the will package with the bells and whistles, and best is probably the trust, right?
Exactly. And so I would say, you want the bare minimum just to deal with your property.
Right.
Great. $300 to $500. You want a will-based package because you have kids, but you don't have a lot of assets yet. Then the will-based package that comes with those ancillary documents that are important. I would say for the most part, people, again, these are averages, 1,500 to 2,500. So your $2,000 was right in line with where that is. And
Okay.
then for most people who want a probate avoidance trust, and it can have a couple of bells and whistles here, but you're going to need some ancillary documents that support that. Then yeah, 4,500 to 5,500, which puts us in the $5,000 range. So
Yeah.
it is kind of a good, better, best scenario. I never really thought about it that way. I always just say, look,
We
what's your
like it
budget?
simple in the mortgage
Yeah,
world. We like to boil it down a little bit, Patrick. So I like, don't know
exactly.
why people like that too. So, but and it's kind of that stage of life thing, right? Because we work with people where they're at, and everyone has such unique things. And, I think it's this, one of the things that we really like to promote on this educational side is that, you know, let's help people not be unprotected. In some respect, I think of all of these things as armor, right? If you want the Shogun armor, the trust, it's going to cost more. It's going to take longer. You've got to prepare it. There's things that go along with it. And if you want just a leather cloak, then, the lowest level of the beneficiary deed, then great. It's better than running out into battle naked. And whatever the
100%.
state's plan is probably not nearly as good as, even the beneficiary deed by itself. quite
A hundred
honestly.
percent agree. No, and you're right. What you are doing is you're stacking your defenses or whatever, however you want to put it. Exactly how you put it is, there are different levels of protection. There are different levels of benefits. And each person is going to need to determine what is best for them. Maybe you've got grandkids and you want to leave generational wealth. Okay, well, you're not going to that's not going to be very helpful if you do a beneficiary deed in that
Correct.
circumstance, right? So, it's, just because my friend did a trust, that means I need a trust. No, no, not at all. Your friend may have other assets that you don't know about, or your friend may have been sold a trust package that wasn't quite appropriate. So
Correct.
you
Right.
you can't judge it based on what other people are doing. You really, it does have to be this sort of individualized assessment.
And again, just I know I touched on it earlier, but do you feel is the best way to get a hold of you and your team the website?
Yeah, medalistlegal.com. My email address is pmcqueen, and that's PMACQUEEN at medalistlegal.com, or my number 602-767-0050. Those are the easiest ways to track us down.
Great. Okay. Well, this wraps up this segment. Stick around. We will cover some more things in just a moment.